I'm so excited for today's topic. One, because it was requested by a viewer, and two, because it's a topic no one really talks about, at least not very often. And it's so important, especially as we get older. Today, we will be talking about the planes of motion and why, as we get older, it's important to incorporate all the planes of motion in every single workout. Welcome to Boom 50 Fitness. My name's Regan, and this is your channel for all things health and fitness in your 50s and beyond. Functionality in all planes of motion is absolutely essential. But why? Because it will help reduce your injury risk. It will also help with balance and stabilization and just your overall performance. So as we get older, specifically, the reduction in injury risk, the balance and stabilization get even more and more important. But don't switch the channel if this seems boring to you, if you already know about the planes of motion, or you don't know about them but you don't really care. Stick around, because this is really, really valuable information that is going to help you live longer and reduce that risk of injury, and like I said, improve your balance and stabilization. And knowing these fundamental planes of movement is really important when it comes to just the application of training and putting together programs for yourself or figuring out what your next workout is going to look like. And maybe you're training for a specific sport or a specific event. Well, what I can tell you is all planes of movement are needed in every single sport. Yep, it's true. Maybe after this video, you can prove me wrong, but I don't think you can. Every single sport requires every single plane of movement. And just in our daily lives, we move through all planes of motion. And the problem that happens as we get older is we start to form patterns when it comes to our exercise routines. And the problem with this is you may work in one plane of motion a lot more than the other planes of motion. And this can definitely cause imbalances in your body. So as we get older, it's even more important to make sure we're training in all planes of motion. I'm sure we all know an older individual who started to scale back on workouts, and as they got older, they started to sit around a lot more. And the risk of injury when it comes to a fall when you're sedentary and older goes way, way up. And you probably all know that scary statistic about if an older individual, I think it's over the age of 60 or 65, yeah, so not even that old, if they break a hip, the chance of them dying within that year of the broken hip goes way, way up. Not to scare anyone, that's not what I'm here for, but you're probably on this channel because you want to lead a long, healthy life and be able to do the activities that you love to do now in your future as well. So I will go over the 3 planes of motion specifically, and I'll also tell you the different exercises working those certain planes, because a lot of times you may know the planes of movement, or maybe you don't, but you don't know what exercises go along with that plane. So today I will break that all down for you. So like I said, it's really important to be using all planes of motion in every single workout. So that's one of the reasons I'm here today, is so that you can make sure when you develop programs for yourself or you're taking a workout class that you are working in all the planes of motion, because it is just so important, especially as we age. It's an important topic, and in the beginning I said it's a topic that we rarely talk about because, I don't know, maybe it's a boring topic, it's not that exciting, but it is so important. In fact, I don't even talk to my clients much about this because I'm thinking of this specifically every time I write up a program, so that each plane of motion, it's pretty equal. So just because this isn't the most exciting topic, let's make this video fun and we'll just dive right into it and start talking about plane number 1. So I wanted to pop up this diagram because this really helped me out when I was in school and I was learning about these different planes of motion. The first plane I'll be talking about today is the sagittal plane. So this is how my exercise physiology professor explained this, and it really stuck with me. If you think about being in a really skinny hallway and you can only move front to back, what kind of exercises could you be doing? We could do some hip flexion, we could do some extension, we could do some calf raises, which technically would be plantar flexion and dorsiflexion. Those are my ankles cracking, click, click. Or we could do some front raises, working the anterior deltoids. We could do some lunges, those kind of things. You've got the idea, right? So this is primarily the plane that most people train in. So next time you're at a gym, take a look around and you will notice that this is the plane that most people in the gym are staying in, at least most of the time. But again, I talked about the importance as we get older to balance out working in each plane. And why do you think this is a plane that most people stay in for most of their workouts? Well, it's because it's the plane that we have the most balance in. So as we get older, obviously the importance of breaking out of just the sagittal plane is really, really important. Because remember, balance and stabilization are the key components that we're really trying to maintain or even improve upon as we get older. And the sagittal plane is also the easiest plane to work in if you're trying to overload the body. And it's because of that stabilization that we are able to overload the body. And one thing to remember, this is a good takeaway, is that almost all flexion and extension happens in the sagittal plane. The only time flexion and extension do not happen in the sagittal plane is a movement like this, moving laterally side to side with your spine. And that brings me right into the next plane of movement, and that is the frontal plane. And a great way to think of this, and this is another way my exercise physiology professor explained it, is to think of a wall in front of you and a wall behind you. And you can only move laterally against that wall. So basically, any movement laterally is in the frontal plane. So I showed you that lateral flexion of the spine, that would be the frontal plane. So a couple good examples of this would be a lateral raise or say a lateral lunge. So in a lateral lunge, you're working those abductors and adductors, the inner thigh and the outer thigh. And although they may not be the prime movers in a lot of exercises, they're really, really important to work. So in a functional movement pattern like walking or running, you may not need those muscles as much, but again, important for balance and stabilization. So you don't want to just be working your quads and your glutes. You really want to make sure you get all the muscles in those legs, and same with the upper body. And the only way you can do that is by working in all the planes of motion. Because muscles like your abductors and adductors are synergistic stabilization muscles, it's really important to work them as well. And if you're an athlete, it will help you perform better. And maybe most importantly, as we get older, it will help decrease that injury risk. Yes, actually that should be thumbs up, but that was supposed to be decrease. But thumbs up on decreasing our injury risk. So we must train in all these different motions. And I mentioned earlier, knowing older people that have fallen, a lot of times when they're falling, they're going down in a plane that they normally don't work, because a lot of times it's just that sagittal plane as people get older that they work in. And it's not that they're actually working in that plane, but just getting up out of a chair and walking to the refrigerator, that's the plane you're working in. So if you're a competitive tennis player or skier, or even just a recreational tennis player or skier, this is really going to benefit your performance if you start working in the frontal plane a little bit more. Because if you think about it, both of those sports, you move laterally most of the time. And the last plane of movement we'll be talking about is probably the most, maybe I could say mistrained, or maybe I should just say undertrained, but it is called the transverse plane. So the transverse plane is all about rotation. So when I work with clients in the transverse plane, we're usually working with a medicine ball, doing Russian twists or twists with a toss. So I love working the transverse plane with a medicine ball. But that doesn't mean you can't work the transverse plane without a medicine ball. So any place we could internally and externally rotate our body, that would be working in the transverse plane. And an easy way to remember this is the ball and socket joints, like your shoulder, we can internally and externally rotate that, and as well as the hip. That's the other ball and socket joint. We can also internally and externally rotate our radius and ulna, which are the bones in that forearm. So that would be another place where you can work in the transverse plane. And one of my favorite exercises to do with clients and to do with myself are wood chops, where you internally and externally rotate. You can use a cable crossover machine. You can just hold a weight and go across the body. One of my faves. So you know I love to talk about the importance of progressive overload. Well, this would be a progression when you start adding in planes that you don't normally work in. And one of the benefits is this can definitely increase the intensity of your workouts. One thing you want to be really aware of and careful of is when you start to add these progressions and maybe add more exercises in with compound exercises or working in different planes. Start off slow. Maybe start without a weight, get the form down perfectly, and then start with a low weight and progress from there. One of the things I always do is I incorporate all planes of motion in just my warm-up. So I don't just pop on a treadmill and walk for 5 minutes. I will pick a light medicine ball and do some twists and some front raises, touch the ball, reach it up overhead, some stationary lateral lunges. So working in all those planes and warming up those muscles properly is really key to what? Decrease your injury risk. I hope you found this video informative and maybe even a little bit fun. I know it's not the most exciting topic, but hopefully you learned something today. And thank you so much to the viewer who requested this topic, because I think this is going to help a lot of people. And I just want to take a moment to thank each and every one of you out there that has been viewing my channel. If you've subscribed, that's so awesome. I really appreciate you. If you haven't subscribed already, I hope you would consider subscribing. And it always helps the channel so much when you leave comments down below. And if you don't subscribe and you don't comment, but you liked this video, just give it a simple thumbs up. I would really appreciate it. So that's it for today. The sagittal, the frontal, and the transverse planes. Those were the topics. If you've got any questions, please let me know. My name's Regan. This is Boom 50 Fitness, your new BFF. I'll see you next Thursday. Bye.